put water over the whole city. It ran 1,100 black families out. And what's interesting about this city, what I wanted to show was, I'm glad y'all came. You know, with all this going on with the man down in Tallahassee State, you can't learn about black history. You can't get 20 Negroes to come out and learn something about it. That's shameful God. Thank you, brother. You come all the way to St. Pete. Give me a thank you. I agree with you, bro. That's right. And so, you know, I don't deal with numbers. I deal with those who want to know. Okay. We want you to know. We're going to let you know. We're going to have a great lively discussion. That's why I put the best panel. And Larry, you got to do after now, you know, on the panel. You fresh on the panel. You. Thank you. Fresh on the panel. All right, so here's what I'm saying. So this thing's so interesting. And I'm going to ask some questions about what Matista did. I invited Matista. Because he went viral about reparations. When I saw this, heard about what they did to these people, on top of Ocoee, on top of Rosewood, on top of Oklahoma, on top of, man, come on, when is the crack of reparations gonna come? We want to talk about it, you know? And so it's very, 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 very important that we get down with this. I want to have Brother Razine come on out and click the video. Razine, come on, let's get the video started. It's an hour long. There's 2 parts to it. The first part of it is we're going to listen to some of the relatives. This happened in 1812. So if you know anything about this in Forsyth County in Georgia, I'm a Georgia boy. That's another reason the name is interesting. I had never heard of it. I'm born in Georgia. But I did hear of Cummins, Georgia, which is in Forsyth County, which is an all-white county right now. But in the same hood, right now. There's no black folks in Forsyth County. None.
It's a reason why.
None. It's all white county. So that don't make a good case for those that integration is working. And so Usher, the R&B singer. Okay. The R&B singer Usher, because you know what, big shot Negroes that live in Atlanta, so-called Negroes, live in Atlanta, they go to this lake just like a place to have fun in. You understand what I'm saying? And they had so many boat accidents, so many drownings. Usher's son drowning in that. And you know, like we grew up in Georgia, like my homeboy from Georgia. The Hanks out there, brother. You heard the word? Northern people don't know about that word. There's a word called the Hanks. Go ahead, heard of the Hanks. Raise your hand. I never heard of Hanks. Okay, born in too much more country than Georgia. Y'all never heard of Hanks? Hanks is like ghosts. Oh yeah, Hanks. Yeah, there you go. He's from Florida. Hanks. Spook, ghost. It's haunted. They think it's haunted. There's been so many accidents like that. And the reason they haven't closed the lake down, because a lot of uplift black people go out there. And then the white folks been drowning. I've been a few here and there. But that thing should have been over with. And the reason they said we have all these boat accidents, because we got a city under the ground. It's a whole city under the ground. It's just some interesting stuff we're talking about here. And so we're going to get started with this. This is real serious. Real serious. And so the first part is going to be on the relatives, and then the next part is going to be a guy who's kind of African American, narrating from the talks a lot. Go ahead and get the license. Turn it up a little bit, please.
It's probably because it no longer exists. It's very linear. 11 laps of caution given. When we started working on this story, we set out to track down descendants of Oscarville. Weeks later, we found a family who could trace back their roots 4 generations. They shared with us stories that were handed down about what the all-black town was like, including the night that led to its destruction. It was set on fire by night riders after they say a white woman was raped. Then later, it was covered by the body of water we now know as Lake Lanier. Dave Crow was buried here at this Gainesville cemetery, but the trail of destruction following her death stretches into the land surrounding Forsyth County, buried beneath these waves of Lake Lanier, where in 1912, nearly every Glen resident was forced out. That includes people living in an old Glen town called Oscarville. The community was formed in the late 1800s during the Reconstruction era.
there was a very strong community feeling among the Blacks. About 300 kids, children, that went to some of the schools that were the Black schools, and it was closely connected to the churches.
Georgia history teacher Lisa Crosby says Oscarville was a thriving Black community, full of carpenters, blacksmiths, and bricklayers, but farming was the top trade.
So they really had kind of a miraculous farming growth here while the rest of the state was really struggling.
But then residents were abruptly forced off their land.
So the flashpoint, I think, is 1912.
This takes us back to the death of May Crow. The 19-year-old white woman was found dead in the woods near Oscarville, presumably after being raped.
Typically, the answer to white girls being raped was go to the Black community and just start blaming people.
By nightfall, terror began to reign over Oscarville.
So from there, the rage and hatred of the community, mobs got together and they were called night riders, and they were riding throughout Oscarville and driving out the Black community.
And the nighttime death, they were waking up by fires outside, fire bombs thrown in the church.
Filmmaker Bob Mackey recaptures those horrific nights in an upcoming television series.
Well, anytime anything happened, guess where everyone would go? To the church. Well, they attacked the church. People were hung, lynched.
Mackey's series features stories of direct descendants like George Rucker, who can trace his family back 4 generations to Oscarville. He tells the story of his great-grandfather, Bert Oliver, and the entire family being forced off their land.
Night riders came through. They had to leave everything. The main thing they left was property. My grandfather had 100 acres.
Rucker says many relatives died as they tried to flee.
So when they got to the Chattahoochee River, from what I understand, they were told, when the mob got a hold of them, they were told that they either had to swim or drown. Most of them didn't make it. My grandfather, one of them that did make it, he lost some brothers and sisters.
He says his relatives who survived settled in Gainesville.
What my mother told me, Bert Oliver, he would sit and tell her this story, and he would just sit and cry.
Crosby says whites in the area took over the remaining properties. She says Oscarville farmers were specifically skilled in raising poultry, which set the pace for Gainesville eventually becoming poultry capital of the world.
You have a farm already going, and you had free land, and so just take it.
Rucker says his great-grandfather married his second wife, Beulah, and they built this school that still stands in Gainesville today. By the late 1950s, the Beaufort Dam was built and Lake Lanier was formed, covering up Oscarville and swallowing most of its history. Many believe Lake Lanier is haunted because of the high number of drownings. We spoke to officials who tell us because there is an entire town that includes structures and even forest areas with trees that are 60 feet tall, it makes it more difficult to navigate through, and someone can easily become trapped in debris, leading them to drowning. We have so much more on this story on our website. Get cable-free live TV with no hidden fees or long-term contracts and 100 plus channels. YouTube.
To just go with what the relative said, now we're gonna go depth in the story, we're gonna go to the next one. Which the next one is about 55 minutes. But that was just a teaser to kind of set the tone for what happened in Oscarville. I want to say also, you see what they're talking about? Why? All these lands and cities they took, it was valuable. They were skilled in agriculture and they were skilled in poultry. And the whole poultry industry, if you know anything about Gainesville, Georgia, which is Hall County, that's what Tyson Foods is. All them little hick towns around South Georgia, they got chicken places. All of them got big poultry places right now today. Even the little town like town I was born in. We never know why. And they used the same trick. Oh, white woman was raped to come in and take the town. But they took the town because their crop wasn't growing. See, they want to try to always make that we don't have no sense that we old Negro big. We have a certain skill about how to make agriculture work. While Oscarville was thriving, little surrounding counties around, all kind of around Georgia, their crops was going bad. They didn't have the skills on how to crop it. And they showed them how to raise the chicken and how to process the chicken. That was the reason they wanted. They didn't take it any kind of town. That's what I want you to know. So we're gonna get into that when the family discussion starts. So it's a little bit more, before you want, just a little bit more stew. We're gonna get out of it when we, get out.
Famous for Venice Beach. Famous for Venice Beach. Minneapolis has a chain of lakes. And our good friends up in Charlotte enjoy the river. And I'm probably gonna butcher the pronunciation, but I think it's Catawba River. But anyway, citizens enjoy water recreation in the metro area in these places. And we in Metro Atlanta also have a well-known body of water. But in addition to being known for water sports and outdoor recreation, our summer destination of choice, Lake Lanier, has a history which is both tragic and a source of myth and superstition. Oscarville was a prosperous African-American city in the early 1900s. After the murder of a white woman in Forsyth County, its Black residents had to flee from white terrorists to Hall County and other locations. Later, the US government created Lake Lanier on what was Oscarville. Now, some insist the treatment of Oscarville's Black residents and the flooding of the town has made Lake Lanier haunted and is the cause of numerous tragic accidents that occur in the lake every summer. This evening, Ron Gauthier will share some of his research on the history of Oscarville and the racial cleansing of Black residents by Forsyth County white terrorists. He will also address the belief, held by some, that Lake Lanier is actually haunted. I think we can all talk about that. Well, let me tell you a little bit about Ron. Ronald M. Gauthier is a library branch manager in the Gwinnett County Public Library System, where he's been employed for over 16 and a half years. He's been actively involved in outreach, community partnership building, and his program planning for the library has impacted numerous demographics, categories, and citizens and residents throughout Gwinnett County. In 2018, he devised and implemented a Black History program for Bay Creek Middle School, targeting 8th graders and their teachers. And the program has been so successful that subsequently it's been expanded to more middle schools as well as high schools, and is offered both in person and virtually. Prior to working in libraries, both in New Orleans, Louisiana, and Gwinnett County, Georgia, Ron has taught adult education courses and was an employment job readiness counselor and instructor. Ron holds a BA in English from Southern University, a master's in counseling and adult education from Xavier University, and a master's of library and information science from Louisiana State University. And with that, let me go ahead and ask Mr. Gauthier to begin his excellent presentation. We're going to learn a lot this evening. Ron, please go ahead and get started.
Good evening, and thank you for that introduction. I really appreciate it. I'm very excited to be here tonight to share the story of the origins of Oscarville, Georgia. So as we know, there are stories of multiple missing persons, which is factual, in Lake Lanier, but also there are also stories of the supernatural and the paranormal, visions of ghosts that are floating around the body of the water, and people claim to get reached from inside the water and sucked down. So what we will do is this. We'll focus on some of the facts that we know, and we'll need the ghosts, goblins, and so on and so forth to maybe a team of Ghostbusters who could join us at another time. But let's talk about the city of Oscarville, Georgia, where it was located. So a good thing to do is to know exactly where is it located now in Forsyth County, Georgia. So if you look at the map I have available for you, Lake Lanier is right outside of Cummings, and it's sort of like the southeastern side of Forsyth County. Oscarville, Georgia, the city that we will talk about, is primarily under Lake Lanier. So we'll talk about the origins of Oscarville, Georgia, and we'll also talk about Lake Lanier and how it came into being. So we'll talk about the racial expulsion that occurred in 1912 in Forsyth County. But one of the things I'd like you to know is that that wasn't the first incident of a racial cleansing in Forsyth. In 1838, the Cherokee Nation, Native Americans, were actually forcibly moved from Forsyth County. They moved to what was called the Indian Territory, which is now called Oklahoma. So we had these incidents very early in our community. So Georgia was really an outlier in the community. Georgia was a place that saw remarkable social experiments during Reconstruction. So we'll start with the slavery time. Georgia, just like any other southern state, had a large slave population, and Forsyth County had one as well. But following slavery and going into Reconstruction, that's when we see some amazing advancements in terms of African American civil rights in Georgia. So let's walk backwards just a bit so we can talk about some of the things that occurred that led to these major changes. So during Sherman's March to the Sea, the famous March to the Sea, his army approached an area called Ebenezer Creek, which was about 20 miles out of Savannah, Georgia. Now, his army and crew, with their engineers, had the ability to erect, when they needed it, a pontoon bridge. And a pontoon bridge, as you see in the picture, is a bridge that can be erected overnight with the skill of the engineers and then suddenly moved. Now, remember that Sherman was undergoing a very difficult time because as an army marched during the blazing battle in there, scorched to the earth, marched to the sea, they were also experiencing a slowdown with a large number of African American slaves who were following the army. So at one point, when the army approached the pontoon bridge and they knew that the ex-Confederates were closely behind them, they decided to move across the bridge, not allow the slaves to follow them. So they pulled the bridge apart. So many of the slaves fell into the water and drowned. Some of them were left on the other side of the bank and unfortunately were captured by the ex-Confederates. Or I'm sorry, I'm saying ex-Confederates, Confederates. We'll get to Reconstruction in a moment. So one of the reporters, who was also a commander in the army, actually wrote about his experiences and sent that to the media in Washington, D.C. This made its way to William Stanton, who was the Secretary of War at the time. William Stanton took a train down to Savannah and met with General William T. Sherman. And he asked him about the incident, this horrible experience that the slaves had there. So Sherman explained the difficulty that his army and many Union armies were facing throughout the South, that suddenly they were followed by this large number of people who they could not care for. They were slowing down their lines. They didn't have enough provisions for them, water, food, and medication, and they just weren't sure what to do. Now, he did not actually sanction the removal of the pontoon bridge, and not much came out of that, but another conversation started. What do you do with these ex-slaves who were referred to them as contraband? So Sherman met in 1864 in Savannah, Georgia, with 20 leaders of the African American community. And they asked them essentially, what did they want? What would you like to do with your freedom? So one of the men who spoke on behalf of the group was 67-year-old Charles Frazier, who was an ex-slave. And he told them that they wanted land. Land that was tillable, land that they could use to take care of themselves, land so that they could raise livestock, hunt, fish, and take care of their families. Now, Sherman is a strategist, and there was some news. There was actually some available land. There was some land confiscated from the Confederates in the southeastern part of the United States, from North Carolina, right on the coast, all the way down to Georgia, down to parts of Florida, 400,000 acres of land. So Sherman's idea was to redistribute that land to these ex-slaves who were following him, and that way they could build their lives on that land, start over, and he would be free of them following him. So William Stanton agreed to it. they redistributed to the land to the ex-slaves, and they gave them 40-acre plots each. And this is where the term 40 acres of a mule actually originates from. So you got 40 acres each for a family and a mule. And Sherman was able to march continuously on to the Carolinas to finish the campaign. Now, keep in mind, this was an amazing experience because this was the first time in Georgia that was an actual act of redistribution of land to ex-slaves, reparations. So not surprisingly, we would see the birth of the Freedmen's Bureau during Reconstruction. So we would see schools open for the very first time in the South. We would see different social service agencies combined with the Freedmen's Bureau with open schools and educate African-American slaves. We'd actually find the Freedmen's Bureau doing some other amazing things, working as closely with them as they can to ensure that they had food, clothing, shelter. And if there was a conflict dispute or worker contract, the ex-slaves had the opportunity to take that conflict to the Freedmen's Bureau and have an agent resolve it for them. So now let's get into Abraham Lincoln assassinated in 1865. His vice president, Andrew Johnson, becomes the president of the United States. And I don't think I need to tell you, he was not a friend of the ex-slave. Johnson wanted the ex-Confederates to have a very easy return into the Union. And he didn't believe in civil rights for the ex-slaves. And one of the other things Johnson did, unfortunately, was Lincoln had actually signed off on Special Field Order 15, which was the official name of 40 acres and a mule. Johnson, when he became president, he rescinded that. So that land had to go back. It was an extraordinary experiment, something amazing in terms of the sociology of helping people regain their lives, but it was very short-lived. So we had these other positive things occurring, though. We know that Johnson would be in office one term. Ulysses S. Grant, the former general of the Army of the North, would become the president of the United States. And amazing legislation would pass in conjunction with the help from the radical Republicans who were in Congress. So one of those we know is that in 1870, the 15th Amendment. We had the 13th Amendment, 14th Amendment, and then the 15th Amendment. So now we've got African Americans voting for the very first time. We've got schools open throughout the South. So it was a good start with lots of beginnings and just amazing, amazing opportunities. Okay, there we are. Here's some of the schools in Georgia. And I have to remind my students when I share this with them, remember, African Americans were the only racial group in this country legally forbidden to read and write. So this is an extraordinary experience that in 1865, with the help of the Freedmen's Bureau and other benevolent associations, they were actually going to school for the first time. And of course, we know this led to one of the most magnificent experiences in American history, the first Black members of the United States Congress. We had men like, most importantly, Jefferson Long, who was here from Georgia. And Jefferson Long, as we know, as a slave, worked as a tailor. And his tailor shop was located directly across the street from an auction block. And there's Jefferson Taylor. He was the first African American to speak on the United States House of Representatives floor. When Frederick Douglass saw him enter the Capitol, he said, "Here before us stands the flesh and blood example of civil rights for African Americans." And then there were other leaders, part of the original 13 African American politicians elected in the South, in Georgia specifically, 33 of them. And most of those were local level politicians, Tunis Campbell, Mr. O'Neill, and so many, many others. And as we know the story with the original 33, some of these men, unfortunately, were expelled. They soon took the case all the way up to the United States Supreme Court, and many of them were reinstated. The 14th Amendment had passed not long ago, and the Supreme Court realized that these were now citizens. Now, if you look at the statue, this is available over at the state capitol in downtown Atlanta. There's a statue that's erected to pay homage to these men and the work that they accomplished. There are the statues. So let's talk about a reverse now. So all of this great development and these great opportunities for the ex-slaves. So one of the things we know about are the Black Codes that occurred in 1865, and which laws were passed to severely restrict the movement of ex-slaves and deny them the opportunity to really survive in the mainstream society. One of the worst, of course, was the convict leasing system, in which African-American men mainly would be imprisoned, sentenced, and a form of slavery could still exist. They would be sold to mining camps, work on city capital works projects. Many of them would be sold to plantations. So it was a way for re-enslavement to actually exist. And then we would see close to the 1890s, 1880s to the 1890s, many state legislation and city legislation that would actually find a way to circumvent the 13th, 14th, and 15th amendments. One of those was the grandfather clause. And the grandfather clause, which was ridiculous on its entire concept, was that if your grandfather was born in this country and voted prior to 1867, then all of his lineal descendants are qualified to vote. This was important because this meant that a large number of African Americans would not qualify whatsoever. And not surprisingly, in 1915, the NAACP in its very first Supreme Court case would overturn the grandfather clause. Then there was the literacy test. Okay. People were required to take the literacy test. You had to pass the literacy test. And the test was based on whatever the voter registrar decided you needed to pass. Now, bear in mind that the literacy test came first, the grandfather clause after, because the literacy test also discriminated against poor white people who could not read and write. The grandfather clause was used to eliminate the literacy test, and it was another provision. And then, of course, there were the poll taxes. You had to pay to vote. How many people could afford that at that time? In many cases, the poll tax could be equivalent to a full day's wages. And then, of course, there was the well-known all-white primary that originated actually out of Texas. And essentially, you had the primary party, and then you also had the general election. So the primary party voted in a primary election. So the primary party really determined exactly who that elected official would be. And unfortunately, the primary party systematically excluded African Americans from membership. So we found these new laws originated throughout the South, and it was circumventing just about everything those great amendments were designed to do to advance people. And then the riots that were occurring in the South. Of course, we know of the major riot in 1906 in Atlanta, Georgia, where a large number of very angry people stormed into the city, attacking African Americans and Black businesses. And now let's go to Oscarville, Georgia. So in spite of the advancements, followed by, unfortunately, the backsliding and regression, African Americans in Oscarville, Georgia were doing quite well. So we had a population of almost 2,000, about 1,900. 58 of those people, of those families, actually owned their own property. So they weren't sharecroppers, they weren't tenant farmers, they weren't working for anybody, they actually owned their own land. They had schools, they were very successful, and things were going great for a while. They worked on their own plantations. They had their own farms. Some of them worked in rural plantations like many other Blacks throughout the South. But they made a pretty decent living in this environment, this small, close community. Then one day there was a horrible incident. An 18-year-old woman named May Crow was beaten, her body left in a ditch, and she was allegedly raped. So when this occurred in the Old South, the job of the community was to find out who this was, no matter what. Word got out that it was a black male, a young black male, 18 years old. They called him Big Rob. So the search went out for Big Rob. He was captured. He was arrested, and he was brought to jail. Now, one of the things that happened to Rob Edwards, unfortunately, was while he was in jail, a mob descended on the jail, broke into the jail, attacked him with a crowbar, dragged his body outside, dragged him around the town square for a while, and then hung him from a lamppost. And all the people who were present pulled out shotguns and shot into his body until it was basically unrecognizable. So while Rob was lynched, there still were some other members who were accused of being a part of this vicious assault of this woman and the physical attack. They were arrested as well. They were tried, they were sentenced and decided to be tried by a court in Cummings, Georgia. So a lot of things started occurring at this time. Things started getting really leery for Black people. Some of the communities where they lived in were being attacked. So the trial was relatively quickly. 2 young men were sentenced, tried, and found guilty. Found guilty of the Mad Crow at that point. She lingered in a coma for a while and then died. So now it's also a rape and murder. So both of these men were actually hung. Now what's interesting is they were actually executed on the property of Dr. Ansel Strickland. He was the son of one of the largest plantation owners in Forsyth County before the Civil War. So Mr. Strickland had a property that looked like it could be perfect. The sheriff walked around, reviewed his property. He had a large pasture. He had these sloping hills that had a horseshoe field and almost had this natural look like an amphitheater. So the agreement was that the execution could be carried out, but it had to be in private. That was Georgia law. So a fence was erected to cover the part where the execution would occur. But the night before the execution, someone actually took the fences apart and burned the wood. But the execution was carried out that next day. So while these 2 men were actually hung, there was a mob of people who cheered it on. So what you see is one of the last remaining pictures of Ansel Strickland's property right after the lynching. This is known as like one of the last pictures that was taken and that was found in the archive. So it was thousands of people. You know, the hanging was over, but the horror that would happen to Black people was not over yet. So now what you got going on is African Americans suddenly were forced to flee Forsyth County. Now let's talk about how devastating that was in so many ways. Okay, first there's the threat of physical violence, so you have to leave. Then there's the biggest danger of losing your property. Remember, 58 of the people, of the families in Forsyth County, of the African American families, they owned their land. So that was a horror story. Out of the 58 who owned their land, 24 of them were able to actually sell it, but at a very low ball offer. Whatever they were offered, they took it. You didn't have many choices. The mobs are telling you, we're willing to buy your land, this how much we're offering you, and you don't have a choice, you leave. So a lot of those people left. But the other 34, it was even worse. They literally walked away from everything they ever worked for. And remember, a lot of these families, they were just a generation out of slavery. Some of their parents are slaves and sharecroppers. And so they lived a dream that they thought almost impossible at one point, to become landowners. And then this horrific event occurred. It forced African Americans out of the city. So some researchers did some work at the old Forsyth County Courthouse to just take a look at some of the deeds and bill of sale to find out exactly, well, what happened to the land after these African Americans left? And what they were able to find out were all kinds of horrible atrocities associated with not just being forced to leave, not only being forced to move away from a land they knew and were proud of, but they lost so much money. Morgan Strickland bought a 40-acre tract in 1910. But in 1954, M.O. Terry had no problem selling Strickland's land and pocketing the proceeds. Now, there is absolutely no document whatsoever that Morgan Strickland sold his property. And you had other cases like that. One of the worst was a landowner who had just bought his property in 1912 for $1,500. He literally 1 week later, he had to sell that property for $500 and run for his life. And so we had several stories like that that were going on throughout the South. Alex Hunter, who just 3 months before the expulsion, brought a farm for $1,500. Faced with death of leaving, he sold it in December 1912 for $550. And that's the case I just mentioned. You had a Black woman, Martha Bailey. She bought 40 acres along with the Dawson-Forsyth County line in 1905 for $300. There is no record she ever sold the land. In 1913, William A. Godfrey, a white man, was now paying the taxes. So this was occurring throughout Forsyth, that the land was being seized. There were legal terms and legal techniques that landowners could use to seize the property. One was called adverse possession, where if a property has been abandoned, a new owner has the opportunity to pay taxes on it, and then after so many years, that property becomes theirs. So that occurred a lot. So in all, 58 proud Black landowners lost their land in 1912. And many of the workers on farms and on factories, they were forced out of town too. There was a bricklaying company in Cummings, Georgia. A mob approached the workers there and told them they had to leave. So 11 Black men just left, walked off the job and ran for their lives. So now let's move forward. Let's move a bit forward. Let's move to the development of the Great Lake Lanier. So in the 1940s, the Army Corps of Engineers decided to do something more with the waterways. One of the things they did in Georgia was to build the Buford Dam. Now, they had four goals for this. Number one, flood control. Is there a way to redirect that water away from property so it doesn't destroy livestock, crops, damage to property, and so on and so forth? The second one, navigation. Is there a way to control the water so that whatever types of items they are floating through the water, they can get to where they wanted to go? And then number three, actually drinking water for the town of Atlanta. So what they decided to do was to build some type of water purification infrastructure. And with that, have water for the town. And then the fourth one, amazingly, wasn't part of the original plan and became very popular. Recreation. Lake Lanier will become one of the most popular destinations in Georgia and still is to this day. Of course, outside of the multiple sightings of ghosts and goblins and other supernatural. So all of this was named after the great poet Sidney Lanier, who wrote hymns and of the marshes. And then suddenly we have this incredible Lake Lanier. Now there's no talk of Oscarville. So when the Corps of Engineers bought the family out that actually resided on Oscarville property, the families were actually able to move into other locations. Some of them, unfortunately, through eminent domain, lost their land, but they did get a payout. This may have been an opportunity to probably find out who originally owned the lands and probably pay them off, but that never happened. There was no mention of them. So in 1956, all of that property eventually was moved. The water field, it took about 6 years for Lake Lanier to fill. But a lot of the items, like some grave sites, an old bridge, the old wells that they couldn't move, those are still underwater, Lake Lanier, along with the city of Oscarville, or most of it. So it's, again, this is a popular vacation site. In Georgia, one of the most popular areas to recreate in the state. Then let's fast forward. Now, one of the things that didn't occur in Forsyth County was during the civil rights movement of the 60s, there were no protest marches. There was no request to integrate lunch counters and any of those things because those things were totally segregated and you hardly had any Black people living there anyway. So let's move forward to the 80s, 1986 specific. So one of the leaders in Forsyth County, Martin Luther King, wanted to do an actual march into downtown Forsyth to protest the continued conditions, what they felt was like a forced invisible segregation. So the leader of that movement actually got a lot of press in Forsyth. So some of the civil rights activists in Atlanta decided to take it over and continue the march anyway. So some of these civil rights marches and activists were involved in many of the movements throughout Georgia and Alabama, and even down in Birmingham, Alabama for many, many years, so we did have the experience. So they marched in Forsyth County in 1986, and they were met by mobs of people who threw stones at them and cheered, hurled racial epithets, and it was unbelievable the attacks they were exposed to. So another march would follow, and then on the Oprah Winfrey show, she would do a special presentation on Forsyth and actually go down into the county and interview some of the people to talk about Forsyth. And it was an amazing experience. Some of them shared that they were ashamed that this shouldn't be happening in the county. And then there were others who were just actually proud of the fact that it was a quote unquote lily white county and he wanted it to stay that way. So there were 20,000 who marched on Forsyth County the second time. And many of these people were really well known. You had Hosea Williams, who's a prominent civil rights activist who helped lead the march. Later, Coretta Scott King would even join them. And it was relatively successful in the sense that it just brought attention to Forsyth County. Then in 1987, the governor of Georgia decided to impanel a biracial coalition to address some of the issues that led to the march. So he chose some civil rights activists from Atlanta and some community members from Forsyth County. And their goal was to come with a plan to address what they felt was systemic racism, the fact that there were no affirmative action programs in existence, and some of the racism that occurred in the past. So the coalition worked together. Unfortunately, they never came to a truce. So there were several reports, one from one side of the coalition, one from the other, and neither were able to make amends or get anything to happen. So here's Forsyth County today. And as we knew, Forsyth County changed dramatically over the years. We saw the installation of 400. We saw that make it easy to commute from other areas. Now you can get from Buckhead, go straight to Alpharetta and up to Forsyth County in some of those areas. Very modernized. It's much more demographic, even though the number of African Americans is small. And then very recently, some church members in Forsyth County decided to put together a scholarship fund for the survivors of the 1912 racial expulsion. So I have this on this page, and you can see the actual website where you can access it. So if you know members who are descendants of the families that were expelled from Forsyth County, Georgia in 1912, here you have a site you can go to, and the scholarships are worth $10,000 each. So this would be probably the first time in which some type of reparations was offered for the expulsion. During 1987, when we had that biracial coalition, that was their job to try to figure out how could they resolve some of the issues of the past. And this happened very recently. So I could not be a good librarian if I did not recommend some really good books that are available for you. One of the first is Blood at the Root, A Racial Cleansing in America by Patrick Phillips. Patrick Phillips does some in-depth research into Forsyth County, and he writes a lot about all of the occurrences that led to the 1912 expulsion and the aftermath of that as the years unfolded. And then eventually there was that biracial coalition trying to resolve it. Some of the information I just shared about the scholarship, that actually happened after his book was published. Then there's Gwinnett County, Georgia, and the transformation of the American South. If you like something that's a very vigorous history of Gwinnett County, here is a must read. Buried in the bitter water, the hidden history of racial cleansing in America. What the author does is he actually reviews several cities throughout the country in which racial cleansing incidents actually happened. So in what you'll find in reading this book is that it wasn't uncommon as we might think. These occurrences were happening more rapidly than we can imagine. Then there's Lake Lanier, a storybook, the early history and construction of the Beaufort Dam, very in-depth. Now, some of these books, let me be clear, some of these books will not include information about the incident that happened in Forsyth County, Oscarville, Georgia. But if you need information about the origin of the Beaufort Dam and Lake Lanier, these are outstanding books to read. Underwater Ghost Towns of North Georgia was a fascinating book that I'm going to put on the reason list. Then we have Capital Men. We talked about the first African-American congressman in American history. Here's a book that details their lives and how they actually made it to higher levels of government in the country. And then here's some others, Blood Kin. And I have to share Slavery by Another Name. I spoke earlier about the convict leasing system in Georgia. Well, Slavery by Another Name, which was a National Book Award winner, a national veteran.
All right. Y'all tired of that. Did y'all like it? You're interested, right?
Amazing. Yes.
Hey, we're gonna get the panel started. So we do a little housekeeping right now. Anybody else like to get some concessions? The hot dogs is ready, and the bean pie, and the other things that we have on sale, and we want to ask the panel members to come up and introduce the panel. So if I can get everybody to sign in, if I don't get your signature, it didn't happen. So just kind of know about that, Sister Robin know about that. Documentation, deep conversation in the day, so we want to have proof. Push that over. Can I get couple of us to help me bring the table down and bring these chairs down? We want to help you bring the table down. I'll get forward to the people. All right. Put the chair behind it, and then we'll bring the roster, bring the roster right there. Cody, bring that right there. No, bring it. Cody. Oh. That's good. Very good. Okay. Make sure you sign in, put your legible, with your phone number and email address. One other check, let in. All right. What we're gonna do now, we're gonna just introduce our panel. We're gonna have them come up, and I will introduce them. I'd like to bring them first, none other than a longtime community activist. She's the daughter of Marcus Garvey. She's also the regional director for Florida Restoration Rights. None other than my sister, your sister, Sister Connie. Give it to her, Sister Connie. Y'all do better than that. You ain't trying to get hate. And hate don't look good on you. If you ain't clapping, you hate. I hear people not clapping. If you ain't clapping, you hate. And hate don't look good on you. If you want hate to be on your face, don't clap. All right? This is in the African tradition. It's called call and respond. That's right. I call, you what? Respond. I call, you what? Respond. Still ain't respond. Okay, this ain't no ice happening. Okay? We being free. Don't let all that stuff get in your mind. We ain't banging off of here. No. We try to make sure we're not. All right? So, I also want to introduce another sister that's near and dear to my heart. Black women are doing it all over America. They're putting up the same black men. Really, they are. Black girl magic is power. We got to do better in terms of standing up. It's true. And I'm manning up to say it. A lot of black men won't say that because they bare shoulders and they ain't doing nothing. We got to be out front. There's so many our black women out front. We got to take our rightful role as men. Stand up and fight back. Am I right? Yeah. All right. You can answer. I want to introduce our next dear sister, none other than Sister Robin Lockett. She's the Central Florida Director for Florida Rising, a social justice organization that's getting it done. Give it to her. Sister Robin Lockett, give it to her. He's trying to hate and he's going to look good on you. And I need you to go up here. You want to be manly of me. If you sit down to your sister, come up here and pull the chair. Go in the chair. We got to train you all over again by being a man. Why don't you go to sit down? She don't even move when I take her somewhere. I'm going around and open the door for her. She's the queen of the planet Earth, the goddess of the universe. And this is how she should be treated. Next up we have on the panel, this brother is a powerful brother. He represents the black man well in America and camp all over the world. You probably seen him on Steve Harvey's show. He's a big-time attorney. He's a big-time preacher. If I was going to leave my religion, I go to his church. He's the pastor of Vertical Renewal. None other than my homeboy from Manchester, Georgia, Attorney Norman Harris. Attorney Norman Harris. The class you hate and hate don't look that good on you. He's a legal scholar right here. And he love, he brought white love back. He found love in the pandemic. He said, don't pandemic don't stop me. I'm gonna fall in love. Still, I'm gonna marry her. Like when y'all should be glad to hear that. Cut his player's card like I cut mine. And then got to learn how to commit. Take on some responsibility. Able to respond to your duties and responsibility. That's what responsibility means. Able to respond to your duty and responsibility. I don't know his African name, He'll tell me, I know him as Brother Larry English. He's a scholar of African studies. None of that. My friend, your friend of that college, that mental health counselor. None of that. Brother Larry English, give it to him. Federation for family. He's the founder and CEO. He's nothing but truth. The truth don't help me, God. All right. Hope y'all ready. We've been having fun. We've been to delve into serious conversation. I think I got my notes. I have a lot of notes to take. Do I have my notes? Nobody see those things. I'm a whole old. Oh, it is. Thank you. We're gonna get right to it. Make sure the air going, because I sweat a lot. I'm a Georgia. I sweat a lot. I see me sweating right now. Ain't hot yet. All right, it's gonna get hot over here though, because we got some powerhouse. Look at this. Oh my God, this is a beautiful thing. So let's talk about this Oscar bill, and first of all, let them do open remarks about what they think the document refers. So everybody take a minute. I need a time. Some more time. Can I get somebody to do the time? Sister, when y'all be counting up with your nice smartphone, cell phone, iPhone 14 plus, get that 14 plus to work for me. We're gonna give them a 1 minute opening remark, what they thought of the documentary. Let's start with, on this side, my homework in Manchester, Georgia, turning on my head.
Thank you, Brother Jones. Wonderful to be here. What my thought is, first and foremost, the documentary is very educational. And my conclusive thought is the documentary shows that freedom without resources, access, and protection is a fiction. You can unpack that.
Woo! Right.
So first of all, I had not ever heard of Oscarville. The documentary was confirming of what was. It's a confirmation. More evidence in regards to how we were treated, and it's just a confirmation.
I too did not know about the way my husband is Sassy Molina.
Say it again.
Sassy Molina.
Sassy?
Most people just say Dr. Molina. I've seen similar programs. I did not know about Oscarville until Brother John had sent me the flyer, and I wanted to investigate. It's interesting that this is showing at this time because just last week, the state of California released their formula for reparations.
All right, we're gonna get to that.
And but this again reminds me of not only of Rosewood. A lot of people don't know about Fort Montfreet that was outside St. Augustine, all that town, destroyed and Florida, and so many other communities. So very enlightening, very informative, very inspirational.
Right. Peace and blessings, brothers, sisters. The documentary just only reconfirmed to me that this is America. And whether it is that town, or that town, or that place, or that place, this is America, and this is how American people respond to the possible progression of life. And so, from the inception of being kidnapped and brought here, and attempting to be whole in a hostile place, from that time to this time, they won't make it. Woo!
Give it to us, Sister Culliver. All right. What a way to segue into the question. Oh, that's nice. That is beautiful. She did right too. Let me just say this to you. Let's start this question with Sister Robin. What lessons do you think that we can learn from the history of Oscarville and the life of Oscarville?
What lessons?
Listen to her.
You want a timer for this as well?
I think the lessons that we can learn is that, we're resilient, right? As those individuals, those families did, they picked up, took what they could, and they left. And we've been resilient all these years. Do you stand up and fight against the larger quantity, or you just move and move forward? I think the lessons are is that we need to start, and even in this time now, we have to take a stand, and we have to stand firm in what we believe in and how we're being treated. Because history is a round robin. It repeats itself. The question is, are we gonna stand or are we gonna run? We need to band together, be one, and fight back against the injustices.
I agree.
Very good. All right, my brother.
Well, I agree with Ms. Rocky. One of the things that I learned come to mind is there's a difference between progress and cultural transformation. Although there were marks of progress, because there was a lack of cultural transformation, resistance persisted. And we got to continue to fight back against the resistance because we can never let hope die. And if we continue to hope, continue to fight, if we continue not just to experience progress, but force cultural transformation.
Very interesting.
Brother, this is language of movement for Black life. Thank you for that. You know, I guess I look at it a little, let me do my disclaimer, I know many times. I'm a Black nationalist. I woke up tomorrow and did not have to see a white face. Anything that I do with the day, I could not.
Give it to him. Man said, come on, clap for the man. You stand up for him.
That's just me. White, I don't have any, there's not a value that white people have that I want to copy in, not one. And so when it comes to even prosperity, I see that very different. Because I'm a nationalist, I believe very much social capitalism. I do not believe in the capitalist system that has permeated us, that's killing us today, quite frankly. So my lesson from this is, like there's so many hundreds of Main Street Tampas. You know, Tampa had thriving business district as well. But into every city, you know, of course we sidetrack Harlem in this conversation, but every city, and the system is working exactly like it's supposed to. I'm not sure why we haven't figured that out yet. That who is doing exactly what it was designed to do. And so we cannot depend on their system to save us.
All right, man. Good. You subscribe. Especially for time.
If I don't never hear the sound of a so-called progressive white person, a conservative white person, I'm a happy, wonderful woman.
Right.
Because the lessons, the behaviors that has been laid out, the way Brother just laid it out is so true. It is detrimental to us in the present time. In the present time, we haven't seen the need to fight for our own justice. So one thing about the film that I just really, it touched me automatically was the salvation of Black family. That you always hear under attack, has always been under attack, Black family. And so when you see pictures of that and ways in which we have made attempts under the most brutal society to hold that together, to find ways in which to integrate into society by our own educational system being denied the ability to learn, being denied to be economically progressive. And when you see you know, our attempts at doing that then, and then when you look at where we're at now, we're dealing with stress, we're dealing with mental breakdowns, we're dealing with the collapse of the Black family simply because we're trying to keep up with them.
Woo! Let's go. Let's give it to us. It's gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt. Lay that thing out. So let me just say this to you. I want to say something now that's very, very important. And my dear brother hinted at it when we started talking about California. Did not went viral talking about reparations at city council meeting. I want you, I know when people say this, you had Dr. Beard, the white man on the Oprah guy, said that's gonna be a disaster. You got black people say, oh no, they won't get no reparation. You know, same people give all that money back to the white man that's supposed to spend on material things. I'm gonna give my disclaimer. I ain't gonna say what nobody should do with their money, but I know we owe some money. So I'm just gonna be honest, we owe some money now. Just when it's film. I want to show the film to show you that I ain't just talking about say we owe some money. Okay, now let's talk about it. Them people said 4 acres on you, and the president man rescinded that and came back and said, no, we ain't doing that. That didn't happen. We didn't get that. All them people sold their land, but people said, it's about $500. They ain't gave $500. They ain't gave us nothing. They ain't paid nothing. That's the man who was narrating that. They ain't gave that man. They ain't gave them nothing but their land. That's one city. Ocoee, Florida, 1912. The same year this was going on in Oscarville, in 1912 it was going on in Ocoee, Florida, right outside Orlando. Took a whole hump land from them. We know about the Tulsa. You had about 1,200 successful vendors. Look at that, crazy. Some people were doing it. You saw the people dressed up at Central Avenue right here in Tampa. These people was doing it. So my thing is now, we have to get serious out of the community and make it crowd to reparation. Now, I'm gonna tell you about another town I found out about. In Georgia again. It's called Harris Neck, Florida. Google it. It's outside of Brunswick, Georgia. And the people went back on the land and said, it's our land. You know who took that land from them? The government. And the government hit the dead down there when these ancestors in the late 2000 went on the land for 3 days. Y'all danced and stuff for 3 days, then they hit the beds and then ran the people off. So the government do us because Oscarville is what I'm gonna get to. Since the Corps Army Engineers was involved in destroying the city of Oscarville by putting a lake there, all the water and electricity with the Buford Dam that supply water to Atlanta come from land that was taken from our people. So let's talk about, I want you to seriously answer this question. I'll give you a minute and a half. I don't want you to be politically correct. I want you to say, if you want the case for a reparation, how should we go about it at our own local level and local government here? Starting with Sister Connie. A real case for reparation.
Well, I want all mine, my grandma, my great grandmama, the children born and unborn. Now we are in 2023, right? Mm-hmm. And thank God for all of the social justice activists, young people like us that work that they did. But here in this city, and we talked about how after Lincoln and the 48 acres and mule and proclamation was destroyed and never honored. Here in this city of Tampa, in 2020, our city council wrote a resolution. I just want to read it to you. So you can think about how you're going to get your reparation. It says, a resolution acknowledging Tampa history, which contributed to a complex system of racially motivated discrimination against African Americans, formally apologizing to all former and current African-American residents of the city of Tampa for any and all past participation in the damage the shameful history has caused. Declaring support for the creation of a reconciliation commission with a mission of studying and developing proposals to redress the enduring negative effect of the institution of slavery and the subsequently systematic discrimination directed at Tampa African American residents by promoting racial and social equity, providing effective aid. Now, this was signed in 2020. And if you go and you read the document, it says that they understood that even policies that were set that was overt and covert, that the effect that it had against us. The wage gap, the miseducation of our children. So I don't have to go back to find the documents from 1865. I got one from 2020. And it is our responsibility to take this document to them, city government, and tell us how you gonna fix that. How you gonna fix it? So it's all right for us to learn history of past, but when it's right in front of you, what you gonna do? It is our responsibility to learn this document, dissect this document, and go and get out of it. So then we can start making a determination what the disparities, how we want to fix, what type of resources should be put forth in that, but not let it go on that they can write documents, making acknowledgement of their sins, their damage that they caused to our people, and then we become too sophisticated going after our resources. I want mine. I go to city council every week with this document. We need more people to get it and come with it.
Brother Larry, give it to him.
Not gonna bump.
Yeah, go ahead. You're not good. That's very. I did what she said.
Connie is right. Connie is right. She goes down here every week and she says the same thing in regards to that document. And maybe we should organize around that. Take it down there and everybody says the same thing or something similar.
Everybody read the paragraph.
How
Where?
we're gonna do it. So
Here's the thing that you just said a moment ago that struck my attention, and you may have not said it, I may have heard it wrong. But I know that all of these people go to this, and everybody out here go to this. And I gotta tell you, I get more pushback from people who look like me than I do white people. So you know, again, I practice the principles of quantum. Not the esoteric, poetic version of what it's about. I don't do that. I have a dream and all that kind of stuff. I practice the principles of quantum because they are real for all white people invaded to go back. Right? And that's what those values are. And so I agree with you. I have to tell people I don't live in Tampa, I live in Paris, which is that's overseas. And but yeah, I'll be glad to understand because I know. As you said, that is what we tell. They do want to look out and see 5 or 10. Yes. Two of us going now. She's right. She's been this way for 40 years. Ever since, at least I've been there for 20 years. She's been this way. But sooner or later, voices like Norman and myself and Robin, we get silenced because they find that Negro in that person is. They find that Negro that infiltrates. Or they find a way to cleverly sidestep. So yeah, absolutely.
Let Robin finish.
So what you're saying is absolutely correct. So just falling back on this, they find that Negro. So we have to, as a community, really start, silence is that we agree with the wrong that we're hearing. When somebody is saying something wrong or they're misrepresenting us, we can no longer sit in silence and say, that's just them. We have to be very thoughtful and intentional and so that person don't speak for me.
Mhm.
Because right now, those individuals are getting away with speaking for us because we don't pay them any attention. And they're misrepresenting us. So we have to start speaking out and saying, you don't speak for me, and calling people out, because it's no longer good for us, because those are the only voices those people are hearing, are their voices, and they're not hearing the opposition. And we can no longer be silent. In this, we have to be, with the way the world is, we have to be very, very intentional. And we have to be very, very our brother's keeper, our
Right.
sister's keeper. And what that means is that we may have to do something extra. We may have to go a step further. We may have to make a phone call. We may have to do something, but we have to sit or step outside of our boundaries, because this is serious. It's the first time I'm ever nervous about where we're going in this world. Politics.
Right. Robin, give her a round of applause. That's great. And Robin been very intentional about going to city council, not just going to city council, but organizing our trade during the pandemic, for the residents on the forefront about housing issues, rent control, and all of that, rent stabilization. She's been very intentional about that. And so we have some real positive things going on in our community. But I want to now purpose my remarks before I come to Attorney Norman Harris. Attorney Norman Harris, I want you to have thick skin, and I know you do. You're my homeboy from Georgia. But it's been said in our community that the weakest link among black communities is black lawyers. I've never heard that before.
Like what?
Black lawyers. And preachers. I've never heard that. I'm not joking at nobody. You know what joking means. I'm not joking. I want to say it again. It has been said in our community that one of the weakest links among our community is black lawyers. I've heard it. Now let me just say, you ain't heard it like that, heard it like this. You don't have no black lawyers, but that's one of the divorce and child support. You ain't never heard about it excited until Johnny Carter came on the scene and started talking about how the lawyer was coming up being crunk. There you go, one, civil rights. You never heard that. So I want to say, a professional remark of Attorney Norman Harris. Legally, what can we do to start the ball? We had a man in Congress die, putting that bill through John Congress about reparations, federal reparations. He kept doing it until he died. Can't, is this the thing legally, brother, we can do? Just even start with city government. Can we put up action? Can we say we owe $3 million a piece? Whether they gonna do it right away, but put it in the court. You owe this money. You owe them the money, they put it in the court, they keep on getting you everywhere. You still owe that, you still owe that money, don't they? Oh, y'all don't want to know about that money, though. Oh, y'all pay y'all bills on time. Okay. All right, man. Ain't nobody should pay. Everybody should. That's somebody may pay. There you go. So what can we do here? Realistic. I know it's a hard one, but sum it up, or you normally radical renewal.
Y'all was putting me on the spot here. What legally do?
But what type of law do you practice first of all?
I practice criminal defense, personal injury, and some contract law that started with music entertainment.
Okay.
Well, he a lawyer. You can go back to study all
Yeah,
that.
they got certain fields.
I know, but listen, he's certified in that, but he's still a lawyer.
Yeah, true, I agree. Okay.
And there are certain skills that lawyers should have, and skills are transferable. One of the skills is how to strategize, right? So research skills, strategizing, critical thinking, analytical thinking, counter analogical and analogical thinking. So all these type of skills, I think, could be used in the larger community of people with like interests to put together an agenda. But nothing happens without strategy and agenda. Even I was thinking, with this reparation that we're talking about, we need to strategize on what we want in the mail. Not just reparations, but we need to strategize on what reparations should look like. For an example, when COVID hit and affected everybody, what did everybody get? Stimulus check.
I mean, they can do it if they want to.
Right. My point is that if it only affected the black community, I question if that would have been stimulus check. but when it affects everybody, solutions come.
Right.
So why do I say that? I say, if we can come up with stimulus checks for a pandemic, we come up with some concrete ideas for reparation.
Come on, y'all, catch that. The man came through, I put him on the spot, he better, he went up.
So what the lawyers do, we can join the, I'm not the lawyers today. There's a Black Law Association called GIVA that I was on the executive board for. I'm sorry. What I'm saying, my point is, Black associations like GIVA should become a part of conversations like this, and not just banquets every year. You know, if we can join these type efforts, and everybody has a strength, and every profession has a strength. If the lawyers come together, you know, we are not, what is it, social engineering, we're social pathology. So we need to join the concerted effort and bring our skill set, and we can demand some stuff, you know, along with other parts of the community.
We're gonna get to him, man. We're gonna get a question. Hold on a minute, Marie. Y'all gotta give it to him. He did very well. I mean, boy, I'm gonna tell you something. I think there's some more. Oh, y'all clap my homeboy now. He did good. I put the man on the spot on purpose. And he did good. Let me tell you something. Don't let me what they call that in Georgia, my part of Georgia. You had a snapping comeback. That's what we call it in my part of Georgia, snapping comeback. Y'all heard that before? You did good, man. And I think he's right. I want to say this all up quick. Wait, you're gonna be very quick. Just come on up. Everybody else that want to ask a question, not every week. Everybody else that want to ask a question, get behind week. But y'all listen up now. What we want to do is instead, Connie, what we want to do, Connie, we got a lawyer here. We're gonna get cheaper. You just start looking at it. Invite Connie to come talk to him about this stuff. We got to get the doctor. The people saying that. Them people went on record with us in city council. Honestly, they did.
So the fight would be that they put this, because one thing the city council does is they put ordinances in place, or they do things, or they say things, and there's no enforcement.
There you go.
So they just do it just to be doing it. But if they put this in place and we have proof that is not happening, then that's the, you know, I think that's one angle that we can look at, because they're putting it in place that they're going to do something. They're, on the other hand, gentrification, pushing people out of their homes, everything else against the blacks are still suffering, and it's going against this document that they.
Right, but let me say this to you about that document again. Just like I got mine. See, let me tell you something about white folks. You never could get white folks to apologize this way, because apology means you owe me something. And see that, I'm surprised they did it. Because you think you're gonna give me as an apology to repair. Reparation means repair. To repair the damage, you gotta come with some money. You gotta come with some money. Question for you, my brother.
And so for the attorney, you said you were the president or the executive?
No, I was a member of the executive board
Of,
Georgia Income Bar Association.
so you had gave some recommendations. What did you do when you were on it? I mean, the recommendation you just gave about attorneys, did you do any of that while you were on there?
Yes, I did. And I first of all, I attempted to bring collaboration with the organization, with the NAACP. How do I do that? I made the introductions between the presidents and made suggestions on how to do that. Now, I will tell you that I probably was a little different than most of them. So when I just started doing things on my own, honestly. And I was instrumental in starting, when they started, they have a, what they call a GLE, a GEVO, legal education thing. It was a social thing that we would have every other month on social media, and educate the community about different legal issues. So that's kind of what I did. But I mean, am I here to say that I could have done better? Yes. The biggest room in the world is the room for improvement.
He was honest. He was honest in the state. Hold on, one more question. Get it in quick, James Brown, get it quick.
So, I mean, we got different viewpoints in the community all over the place. I mean, we all different. We're not a monolithic people. So what we have to do is learn coalition building, okay? And come together, all of us with different mindsets, because me and this brother have been struggling all week about different viewpoints. And even we differ sometimes. You all up here, and you all different with us, but we got a way to figure out a way to work together, and come together as a coalition, and be able to work with Sister Connie and you all and others out here that have ideas and work together. That's the biggest problem I have. Somebody said that, you said it, sir, that we have more problems with our own people. Kwame Nkrumah said that too, that neo-colonialism is probably one of the most difficult things to overcome.
So is it different views? So different views, or do we want the same goals and have different ways?
Well, coalition building would have a common goal. And
That's what I'm just asking
yeah,
about black people.
yeah,
Black people want the same thing.
Right.
It's how we get to that same
Strategy.
thing is the problem.
But I think he said something. Thank you. Give Brother William. Give Joe a round of applause. Coalition building. One thing on coalition building, that's very important. And that's what we try to do with this. This is a group of leaders from different areas building the coalition.
Here's the challenge that I offer to the folks. Again, this is just one thing. I put on my social science staff, I put on my research staff. So much of this wheel has been invented. I gotta tell you, I mean, I know for at least 19 years, Richard Bristow at USF has been out talking about East Tampa cooperation. Partnership. I can name all these folks up here. I'll do my tiny piece. The idea of how to even get nonprofits to genuinely collaborate. Here's the challenge, socially, do the sociology piece and then the individual piece. The spirit of individualism has been so forced down on us for 600 years that it is now part of our DNA. I call it internalized racism disorder. Just even bringing the State of Tampa Town Hall that took place a few years ago at Milton High School. And it's clear that 75% of us still live in some form of economic deprivation. Since we don't like the word poverty, I know I'm poor, but some of us don't like it. We have moved it to a point now where it has become the misery industry that a lot of Black people have benefited off of. And but they're not about to give up that agenda. Some of your CDCs and others, they're not giving up that agenda. And so I don't want to overwhelm us with the fact that we have a lot of work to do, but we do have some work to do. And just like today when you started, you said, I don't care that it's on 20. It's the right 20. And so when we start, each of us is just one, you don't need 50, just bring one more person to me. One more. We're gonna get to that part too. Oh, okay. I knew you would.
Thank you for that. And let Connie then we're gonna go to the question.
I just wanted to say, you know, I guess we are not one of the people, and sometimes like, what do that really mean? But for me, it means, well, I'm being respectful, but what's gonna pull us back to being one people and one group is the fact that now we're fighting for our damn lives. We are fighting for our damn lives on every front. Whether it is the killing of a Tyrone Lewis, what was his name? Lewis, Trayvon Martin, Brianna Taylor, the child, 12-year-old came with a gun, sister at a door, is now being shot through the door. All these wannabe Karens, all these wannabe deputized law enforcement. We are fighting for our lives. And we gonna have to figure out someone sit in front of the local, we in that damn boat together.
You right? Give it to us. It's gonna burn. All right, one question, brother.
I just want to say thank you for, being here today. This is a beautiful event. Y'all have very, great, interesting points on how we could help our people. For me in particular, I'm a prime minister of the international government. And so we work with the United Nations on decolonization. The United Nations started to decolonize over 90 countries. And so I wanted to ask you guys, what do you think about organizing or putting together an international government for our people to help tackle this issue of essentially decolonization? Because we have to stand in truth and know who we are in its entirety and attach ourselves to the land so we know how to tackle these issues. Every group that you look at, they can say, this is where I come from. This is my land. But our people can't do that because we want to be certain identities that don't attach us to the land.
All right, that's a very loaded question. So I'm gonna start with you, Robin. Do the best you can on that one. It's loaded. All I'm gonna say. Get it in quick. Best way you can.
So what does international, what does that mean?
We don't want to go back and forth. That's gonna start a whole. Trying to get, I know, but we got more people that ask questions. I mean, it ain't quick.
So when I say international, I mean, essentially, if you know history, right? You know that Christopher Columbus came over here in 1492, around that time, right? And before that time, this land was under the dominion of something politically known as the Moroccan Empire, right? So,
All right, that's gonna be a whole other workshop. So I want you to say the best you can on that. Start with them. And then Alice and Tony, that's who will answer the question. Wilbur got a question. Now Wilbur got a question. Elder got a question. Sister back there got a question. So we got one.
Well, give him a chance to explain better what he's saying.
I mean, he doesn't explain that. Y'all understand what he's saying? Everybody understand that? The panel. Somebody in the panel understand what he's saying. Okay. Well, he just spoke.
I just happen to know, brother. So thank you for this. I will tell you, I managed an international grant from the United Nations fund under UNICEF for mental health. And the issue of colonialism, pre-colonialism continues. Had the chance to visit 14 countries on the continent. And when it comes to policy and the things we're seeing play out full on, you'll notice that I've never said that I was an African American. First of all, there's no such country in America. Doesn't exist. There's no such country as slave. So when I do workshops and people say, well, I'm a descendant of slave, I get mad. Because there's no such country. I said, I'm an African legacy or an African descendant, period.
All right, let's just kind of wait on this.
I understand, brother, what you're saying, and through the teachings of Brother Chairman Amali Stella, the writing of Brother Malcolm, we would have to do a whole start over here. That means we got to kill all this off. It starts to be going, because right now what we have is this shiny object of capitalism that everybody's running toward. Everybody's running toward. I mean, the borders, everywhere else, instead of people fighting to get some relief where they at, they're running over here. So we can write letters, we can join, but we're wasting time. I think it would be a time wasted if we put all that energy there, thinking that we could win some relief from that body when they could be corrupted with what? Capital. In capitalism.
I was in the courtroom, you know what I was saying to you, brother? I was saying, nothing further, Your Honor. Nothing further, Your Honor. That's what I was saying in the court. She didn't head. She said what I was trying to say. It couldn't articulate like that. I agree with you 1,000%. You know what I mean? You want to?
I don't even know if I need to bother that.
You want to check? You want to check?
I just think that the whole idea of America a social construct. Yes, yes, yes. You know, white, what is white? There's no place called white. What is black? There's no place called black. Those are some social constructs to systematize what we experience right here today. So, I mean, that could be another discussion. But
Rob, you want to make this about it? Okay. All right, brother, that's it. That's all you're gonna get for that today. Brother, that's it. Thank you, brother. Prime Minister help forward. All right, come on, Alan. All right, Sister Alice Moore from Colorado, and she gonna make us speak. Yeah.
I wouldn't say I agree with Connie's right, but what we need to do, and like she said, we need to kind of change all of it. What are we going to do to get our people together? Period. And like she said, we educate. We got more preachers than we got attorneys, and there are people up there every Sunday. There's the diehards. There's the people who couldn't stop it from coming. We need to do something to get the churches involved, the pastors really, to start doing and start talking about it. We don't educate each other. And again, he's right. We pull against each other. We need to do something to start working together. I don't like Connie because Connie braids long too long. I don't like Robin because Robin, you know, she always talking and crying.
All right, then. That was a statement, not a question. Do you have a question for the panel?
We gotta stop. Why do we come together whether they like each other or not, with us against us?
All right.
You know, so we got all of her.
Okay. If you got a statement, when you come up here, just be honest up front, say you got a statement, not a question. We want a question.
So, so in regards to her statement, so where we are right now, right? For years, we have been fishing or boating in a small pond. And in that small pond, we have naysayers that stop the progress. For one, we have to expand the pond because there's more people out here than this little small group, right? But another thing is that I look at now in my life, I look at my reference is Noah's Ark. You know, God gave Noah a vision to do X, Y, Z. Everybody laughed at him, didn't pay attention to him. The people that believed in and what he was doing, they came with him. But so in life, everybody's not meant to go with us.
That's right.
We take the people that are meant to go with us, the people that are naysayers, they're gonna start trying to jump on, but the ship will be gone.
Right.
Right?
All right, let's get some more questions for this esteemed panel. Come on up. Hold on 1 minute, because I know you got, I want to get these questions from the panel. This is Brother Ma'am, Will Monson, he's of St. Petersburg, this one center, 18th Avenue South in St. Petersburg, my dear friend, and a Muslim brother in the struggle.
I'd like to greet all of you, peace, brothers and sisters. I got a statement with a question. I have flyers here for something that we've been doing for a little while now. We do Kwanzaa at St. Petersburg Islamic Center. We've been doing it for 4 years now. We have a packed house every year that we do it. But we decided that that's not good enough. Just, you know, that one little week. And so what we've decided to do with this Ancestors Day, every fourth Saturday of the month, we've been doing Ancestors Day. We don't have the big crowd. We can make a crowd like this, you know, 20 people, but it's growing and it's growing and it's growing. I found, as a leader in St. Petersburg, that our biggest issue is after American, but Black folks or however you want to say it, that we don't identify as a people. And it's mainly the ones with the PhD degrees and the master's degrees that's in these flushy jobs and everything that don't want to get involved with anything that's Black. I did a program at my mom's and I showed hidden color. That's great too. And the place was packed and everything. And then when I started hitting colors, them brothers started talking about the history of us as a people. We had so many people that walked out. And they were leaders. These were leaders that were supposed to be Black, that's supposed to be in the groove, fighting for our cause and all this stuff. So I found that we need to educate our people on who we are, what we've done, because when we go through the neighborhood and we're knocking on doors, we ask the people about different people in history. Now, the common ones like Muhammad Ali or Malcolm X, they know all this, but other people, they don't know who, like real McCoy. They don't know the real McCoy was the black thing. Elijah McCoy. They don't know that one time Tuskegee bricks was the only bricks that people would buy because they were the best in America. They don't know that George Washington Carver was the first one to bring gasoline from corn. They don't know that George Washington Carver was the first man to, that Delano Roosevelt came here and said, hey, we're having a problem with the army. We got these big containers. There's condoms, so he invented plastic. There's so many, our kids don't know any of this. So what we did is we established in our kitchen, we got big 16 by 16 pictures of all of these people. And then when people come in, we do it like Kwanzaa, we do the libations and everything, but then we always have a speaker that talks about somebody. So we're introducing the kids, we're introducing the people to themselves. And I think, and my question is, how can we join together? Same thing, we come over here sometime, y'all come over there sometime, so that, we can get crowd. When you get the crowd, you get a crowd of people, then people think there's something really going on. And so that's what we need to do. We need to support each other in this, because until African American people become free or become the men and women that we're supposed to be, nobody will be free, because they are just as ignorant as black people are about their history. White people are ignorant about their history. That I found out. They don't know anything about their history. They really think that they're privileged people. They really think that they work themselves up by their bootstraps. And they didn't do any of that. We did all of it. So I'm just saying, my question is, how can we introduce our people to themselves through history?
All right, then take the first comment.
I think that's a beautiful work that you're doing, brother. I was thinking as you was talking, one of my favorite artists who was the OJs, and they say, got to give people what they want. Got to give people what they want. And the people want that. And our children want it. When I was in public housing, we had a library, we called it the Thing Who Hang My Library. And it was just, again, introducing our people a little bit at a time. I believe we're in the midst of a paradigm shift where we thought the talent and talent was going to be able to solve the problems of our community. They're not. For the most part, as the wind blows, they might be on this side one day, hate you like power, and then when white folks on them, they black and black. And they jump back over here. So I think what we could do, and what I committed myself to do it, is how we can get more of our young people engaged. We got to give the young people what they need. Young fathers need jobs, young mothers need housing. We got to commit ourselves to those particular programs and make a demand from the system to give us our resources so our people get that.
Shoot it on the head. Wait, just go down.
Just go really quick.
Get your answers short, because we gotta get some people
on. I'm gonna switch it just a tiny bit. In that, okay, I'm a psychologist, and I know that the mind is a terrible thing to waste. Belief systems are very, very strong. So I'm gonna change the dialogue, because I believe in writing my own narrative. That's what it means by self-determination. Second principle of Kwanzaa, which is about to be. And one of those is that we do Kwanzaa for every day living. Every day is an issue of Kwanzaa. The schools that I go to, luckily, 97% black. That's what I preach. They know that's what they call it. It's Kwanzaa for everyday living. I'm probably one of those individuals that's I'm woke but I'm broke. And the reason being is because I volunteer to do stuff, but we each Friday we do the talk series along with Florida Rising, and we there too promote the principles of Kwanzaa. So we want to find a way to connect with you, because clearly you're doing it the same thing. That's the last thing we'll say, is that just because you don't see something going on all the time, doesn't mean that nothing happened.
I like that.
So, sometimes some of the stuff we do is not going to get the big bang thing. In fact, intentionally it's not big bang. So, yeah.
That's right.
I agree. That's, you talk about talk and so forth, so yes.
And I agree as well. And if I could just tag on to say very briefly, we got to learn to define our own reality. You know, we don't have to accept Black History Month in February because they say Black History Month. We can have Black History every day, or we could do a quarterly Black History, or whatever the case may be. I'm the founder of Vertical Renewal, and we have to define our own reality. I've already talked to Brother Jarvis about doing something in conjunction with the Muslim community. What Christian church have those conversations with Muslim community? Well, I'm not covered by the norm that I feel like is self-structured.
Well, let me say something. Very good. Give it to him, Norm. That's my name. Give it Norm. He's right though. He did right. And we're doing something in September. We're gonna do a interfaith working together. I went to his church, and I tell you, I feel very, very comfortable at his church. He did a great job. I was there. And my wife, you know, she'll really be, she's living with a Muslim all the time. She got Holy Ghost that day. She never did everything Holy Ghost. I thought word myself, you know. But we had a good time. But what I want to say to you, my dear brother, we started a summer youth program, and Razine is helping me organize. Kicked it off this week. And so we did a pre-assessment as to what they know about self-esteem, what they know about the culture. None of them know nothing about the culture. I mean, absolutely nothing. This group, right here in Summer Spring, they damn didn't even know Martin Luther King. Now, you know that's term, you don't know Martin Luther King. You know, if you know Martin Luther King, you still don't know Malcolm X. You know Malcolm X, you still don't know Louis Ali. So I'm just saying to you, brother, please come. On Tuesday, I'm talking to you. I need you to come on Tuesday, 11 o'clock. 11 to 1. Just come, get it in quick. Come for 30 minutes and talk to them about Kwanzaa for everyday living. And we'll give you something to listen back for your gas. We'll do that. No, we will do that. You're wrong. You say you walk by truck number 50, you will be back for gas. I'm calling on Norman to do the same thing. These children have never seen a lawyer. I got black boys and they very articulate. I got an immigrant Muslim come in and talk to him about Arabic. You'd be surprised. These boys right on top of algebra. They ain't nothing about that, but they know about algebra. They were shocked. They know about that. So we're doing something with STEM, with scientific technology and math, doing it for the summer. And y'all look out for my text and we're going to partner. Y'all talking about working together. See, everybody say that about working together. But let me tell you what we say about it in our faith tradition. It says that enjoying what is good and enjoying to work with people that you can work with. You waiting on all of us to come together, waiting on to get all the preachers. There you go. Let me be the first one too. Amen. Work with the preachers that you can work with. Work with the social organization you work with. The true social justice organization. Florida Restoration Rights Organization. Florida Rights. We're working together. See, we always talk about what we need to do. On somebody here clap that we got 4 different organizations, 2 different religions working together today. And y'all don't like it. Y'all want to get that. We got a black Muslim, came out of Nation of Islam, studying traditional Islam now, work with us. Pentecostal, Georgia, Horrible preacher. And then he changed the name to what? Vertical Renewal. What that is, it's going up. I go with it. And we got another Muslim here working together. So I'm just saying to you, we're going to do all of these collaborate. We're going to Robin asked us, Robin wants you to be a partner. So kind of with the partner. Robin asked me, I'm the question. Bill, you want to get it right? Or just you want to play, or you want to really collaborate? All right, we want to collaborate. I told kind of the same thing. So we're going to do another get together. May not be a family discussion. It's going to be those. We're going to try to bring one more organization. So every time we do something, let's bring a new organization in. And we'll work together. Let me get one more question from a young lady. It was her first interview. Thank you. All right, come on, sister. You've been spending that smile. You got to go on with it.
One more city.
I just wanted to address something that you said. You mentioned that people with advanced degrees, master's degrees, and PhDs don't really reach back out to the Black community. And I just want to let you know, I don't think I'm the exception, but I do have a PhD. And I've only been in Tampa for 9 months. I'm a member of the NAACP. I'm a member of TOBA. I'm in the executive board of the Black Caucus. So I don't know why you feel that way. I just want to let you know we are out there. We are supporting Black people as well.
I didn't mean that in jokes.
All right, let me just stop. She didn't mean it all, but we glad you're here. We glad you're here, sister. You got your PhD, because you know why I'm blessed up PhD, sister? Because I ain't got to get one. If I do that one. If I need somebody with a PhD, I got a friend. So they choose sign in this. On that note, everybody sign in this. Come on up.
She's sorry.
Everybody sign? Everybody. You rocking? Okay.
Lauren, you are in the
Right. Right. Thank you, Ron. One of the team from the and you renew. Oh, you got to renew it. You own the team. You ain't got to worry about it. Where's your PhD? We get this thing out of Kenny. You got a Jewish doctor. We want to educate the people to build the world that we want to build.
Yeah, that she's been here for 9 months, and she, again, being very intentional and being involved, and being, not being involved on paper, but really being involved in regards to change. So she is an exception.
And we appreciate it.
And we appreciate it. Let me mean my Muslim brother. He didn't mean like that. When we say that, we don't mean all.
Yeah, not all.
No, we don't mean all. What we saying is, we've been in this town a long time. 35 years, years. We've been in all this, So we have a lot of people that highly educated. That don't work. So, if we ain't in no sorority, we don't say we're Q Dog or Alpha, we don't say we AK. We just trying to say we love them too. They come to town, 15,000 of them come to town in July. And we'd be glad for them to come bring money to the city. We want them to come participate in our economic growth. We love you, sister, and we want you to be a part of it. And we want you to come on Tuesday and Thursday at 11 to 1 right here. And let these children see somebody with a PhD that look like them. All I want you to come in and say, I got a PhD, I know this. You talk 15 minutes, we'll use some gas money.
I have a question. I was always taught that no question is a dumb question. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, we as Black people, how can we do a class licensing? If they owe us money, why haven't we did a class licensing to get our monies? Can we do it, and how can we do it?
Let me tell you something, sister. You've been sitting there, you said nothing. That's a damn good question. I don't cuss as much as I used to. Tell you, stop cussing. I had cussed on that. My mama, Jimmy Bell, was a cusser. But I'm saying to you, class action suit. Go on back to my legal man. If I get the red, you need to go on the first round. You know how you do that, and you come back on the second round. You gotta come back and come on the second round. You gotta pump the time.
Well, let me see if I can say this simply. To bring any kind of suit, there has to be a legal cause of action. And one of the problems is there are no legal causes of action whereby to bring that type of class action suit, which brings us back to community demanding what we want and putting forth agendas and demand to people who are in power, like, I don't know, city council and folks, county commissioner and state government, because that's what happens when you don't have legal cause of action. You have to demand change when the law doesn't permit it. So that's why, right as we sit right now, we can't just go and say, let's bring a suit.
What about the 40 acres in a mule? We were promised that.
It was an executive decision.
Oh, I got you.
And they said that in the movie too. We don't come back from these let me get Elton.
I don't think I got my phone. Okay, go ahead. You're right. They did say that in the movie, but I know there's been reparations for other people. For instance, and I think if the passing of information is what we lack, because I'm just finding out some stuff recently that I didn't know about, right? So I don't know if people know it here, but when the slaves were taken from the slave owners, they got reparation money for that.
Yes, they
They
do.
got $300 a slave.
Yes,
You understand what I'm saying? And there's, I think people from the Holocaust got reparations.
They got
So I'm not an attorney, but why can't we use these situations to do something similar? And that's just a question for, again, like I said, there's been other situations where people have gotten money because they were wrong.
Japanese, president was doing this, and I think that, you did right. Come on, come.
I just want to say, not their lawsuit, now you're seeing certain cities are raising the reparation question. Out in California, there's a city in Chicago that is using, right, that's using reparation to restore value to some of our people's home. But this is what I was thinking. The very people that enslaved us, we're dealing with now the grandchildren and the great-grandchildren of that, that might find it unbearable for them to even concede to the fact that they owe us anything. I think the greatest power that we have as a people right now is our economic power and our voting power.
Yes.
And if we would utilize that, you know, one reason why I raised my hair is not because I was enlightened with say Jamaican tradition. I could have paid my man. I was gonna spend the moment.
I was just.
That's no pearl, no this, no this, and that. And that was gonna be my contribution to saying African is beautiful and I was gonna have these flowers. And so if we find ways to collaboratively come to the economic development plan, we can get anybody to the table, because one thing that is always said about Black folks, our spending habits hurt us but benefit them. You know,
Oh, shit, give it to her, round of applause. Give her a round of applause. Anybody want to come in there and get out of the one?
I was gonna say she's right. When you look, we're the only people that other people can come in our neighborhoods and make money. We're no other neighborhoods. When you're watching the Spanish, you're watching nail shops, you're watching all of that, and we all go. We do not patronize that one, but we're the only people who let folks come in. The Asians and everybody comes and they're making good gobs of money. And like she said, if we got together, my friend was just telling me somewhere this year in California, the people, I don't want to say which state because I might get confused. The people stood in front of the hair store,
right,
wind up closing it down. Right. Everybody is in our community. You don't see any of those in the white community.
Right.
None at all. There may be up around none. But all of our community, I counted 5 hair shops owned by the other nationalities on Hillsborough, starting from Nebraska to past 34. Right. And so we got to stop that. We got to make sure they open grocery stores, everything right here. I don't know if this is White Home. I'm gonna stop right here. That just opened up again. It's been closed right there in Waters. The store, Arabs, it's been, and grand opening, jam packed. Right. Everybody coming. So we're the only people.
Yeah. So here's the thing. Here's the thing. Here's the thing. That is all true. The first thing we have to do is do what we do today. Beginning to work together. I did a lecture in mosque yesterday. I said characteristics of building a model community. One of them was trustworthiness. Trustworthiness. You gotta have trust among each other. You gotta have trustworthiness, right? Persistent. Okay, I'm gonna end on this. So I want to keep y'all all night. I'm gonna do y'all closing remarks. I'm gonna make my closing remarks. And then my last question to my hold on for a minute. Listen up, y'all. I'm gonna give my last question to the panel. This is a serious question, especially if you live in Tampa and you lead in Tampa. All these are leaders in Tampa. Then I'm gonna let them do the closing remarks, and then I'm gonna do a closing remark. Then I'm gonna ask Brother Imam to close the prayer. Okay, and the other preachers gonna do it. Christian Muslim prayer, closing. All right, here we go. Y'all know about the meeting that Commissioner Miles called. Robin was there. 509 committee. After everybody came together, everything you were talking about, everybody that you talked about, sister, that wanted to be somebody, everybody was there. Highly educated people were there trying to save jail. The AKAs were there. The Delta was there. The Omegas were there. The PhD, no degree. You know, the church over grass, church under grass, church in John grass, the black Muslim, the Sunni Muslim, the Shia Muslim, the 12 Muslim, the 13 Muslim. Everybody, Nation of Islam, Orthodox, everybody was there. She was inspired to call a meeting to bring us all back together to address some issues, the sentiments, things we came up with, motive empowerment, some other things we came up with was addressed. NAACP president was there, Urban League president was there, Tobo was there, some of the people from the Institute, Gary Hockfield and the new up and coming leader, he was there. I want to know what y'all think. And another meeting gonna be held at the Les Miller Center by King High School on June 28th, a follow-up to that same meeting. Do y'all really think that we can work together with somebody who's gonna brought us together, gonna Barbara tried to do it, bring us together, she was doing it, build it out, no resistance in it? Right? I'm talking about the chapter, like I said, all of it, bringing all of us together.
Oh,
Black agenda, please. Right, that's one. Okay, so now, with that all being said, here's another opportunity. All people that won't work together, get the priests together. She did the first thing was a well-organized meeting, I must say. You know, I thought she laid it out. I want to get your take. Started, what you down on? Okay, you heard about it, so just give your, what you heard about, so you can do yours in 30 seconds. She's not long because she was dead. Saying that you got 30 seconds. Just say what you think about it.
When I heard about the raise the effort, however, there was frustration with internal conflict. So we tend, when we get together, to highlight differences and things that cause conflict than to raise the common issues that we should be working to resolve.
Oh, you hit it on the head. You hit it on the head. Where, you hit it on the head.
So I was there, I give her an A for effort, for pulling it together. I'm a C person, so, pull people together. The interesting part is gonna be when, I guess they made like 5 different issues. Yes. Now, I guess the elected work begins, so I'm see who's gonna volunteer for the work, so I don't know. But what I want to say something quickly. In regards to taking a stand, this is a quick story. When I was running, I went to my doctor. Been going to this doctor for over 30 years. And just so happened, he said, "Hey, Robin, you know, I voted for you," right? And I was like, "Oh, you know, okay, you know, whatever." Then he says, some kind of way he mentioned DeSantis' name, right? I think DeSantis is doing a great job, I think. And I looked, and I said,
"Your doctor."
Yeah, my doctor. And he's a Cuban. Curly hair, Cuban, right? So I said, "So you believe in what DeSantis is saying?" And he said, "I think DeSantis is doing a great job. I think that," I said, "So what about erasing Black culture?" And so he says, "Well, I think everybody has the same opportunity." So he gave it from my lens. Now I have to find another doctor.
Yeah, no, that's right.
But if we do that, that's being intentional. Asking the people who we do business with, I drive through Starbucks. When Black Lives Matter was going on, I said, "Hey, do y'all believe in Black Lives?" "Oh yes, Ms. Robin, we got the shirt and we support it." You know, but who are we spending money with people if they're not with us? Because how I saw my doctor, I was like, "Darn, I'm making this man rich, even with my copayment, my insurance is, and he's going to support DeSantis." So if we do that, those little things in our small preview, right, in regards to asking questions and sticking with people who support us, that would start the chain reaction of making people realize, hey, Black people ain't joking.
You're right about that. Just a little small.
I'm not going to be later, as you said, this is our closing statements.
No, take my clothes.
Oh, this is closing?
No, it's not.
Oh, okay, no question.
Okay, so as it relates to me, then I have zero confidence in it. I saw it as posturing. I saw it as not dealing with real concrete issues of people. Most of the people there is pretty much financially secured and taken care of, and they never see ways of opening up a position in which the advocacy of those that's not in the room can come in the room. So I didn't have no conflict and won't be back.
All right then, so here we go. I want you to get everybody to take on it, because we want to be transparent about everything. And that don't mean that we can't see good in what other people do. We're gonna move forward. It's kind of move forward, because the best thing came out of this meeting. We're gonna get a takeaway from this panel discussion. Takeaway is that document that City Council in 2020 said they admitted that they have a history of treating black people wrong in the city of town. Now, Florida Rising is the lead organization to get things done. Our team is here. As a matter of fact, one for Florida Rising today, won't be nobody here. You know what I mean? I promoted my own people to church. See that, brother man? Two people, 2 months, all the black Muslims in this town. They got some self-esteem issues. They don't, you know what they do. Yeah. About a big one. You hear from me. But anyway, back to the range. So here's what I'm saying to you. This is something that we can organize behind, is getting people to go down and see a portion of that document. What is that called?
Resolution.
I'm gonna get the right word.
The resolution of acknowledgement.
Resolution of acknowledgement that they treated us bad. That means they owe us money. So next step to that takeaway, second step to takeaway, we can get a meeting with this group, with the top man from Jiva, and then they can come up with a legal strategy behind the resolution. We gotta take 1 or 2 little bullet points. We ain't gonna solve all the problems. We ain't gonna get rid of all the rabbits yet. We ain't gonna get rid of all the Koreans yet. We ain't gonna get our own country yet, but we ain't gonna go to the United Nations yet. We don't do all that yet. We gotta take a little bit that we can do. My whole thing is why we don't make progress with convenience and people, just my closing remark, is that we try to take on the magnitudes of problems we have in the black community. This is one little small portion of it. We stay with it. Let me tell you what I mean by that. And I'm not sure of the content, but I have to be true. Content for 5 years when the city council told them people on city council, stop just giving our people jobs, picking up trash, cutting grass. Our children deserve to be doing more than that. They need to do an administrative job. They need to go in their office. We find out the current mayor was already doing that for white children. That came out. What happened was, that came out, what Connor was talking about, they said, white folks got to see it like they win. We ain't gonna do it this year, Connor. I guarantee you, Connor, we doing it next summer. So summer 24, you Connor ain't gonna let them forget it, because after she do the resolution, she bring that back up. She bring up the summer job back up. So 2024, that's a victory. That's advocacy at its best. You stay with that one thing, and we stay with this one thing, we can get some results. That's everything. So let us work with you, because we're not partners, Elton, Motorized, and Masjid An Nasr, and our influence in the community. I don't claim to be no black people, this and that. I just claim to do what I do because it's the right thing to do. And advocacy is in my blood. I want to first of all, while everybody's going to do closing remarks, thank you, each and every one. Thank my dear friend Sandra. She always come. Thank you, Sandra. We left another set. The blues set was hanging out of the blues set with black bikers 2 weeks ago. Sir Charles Jones was throwing down, and Jeter Jones was throwing down. Some old people. We had some fun with that. And want to say, Alice, Sister Greta, one of my Muslim sisters, I think that's your cousin. She came by, brought the natural juices. Thank you, dear sister, for being here for how long? 6 months? 9 months. You're already involved. We got a lot of utility for that big old piece. We got a lot of utility in this country. So I want you to be a part of what we do. Elton can never do it without you. Always right there for us. Robin, we want to thank you for the rising. We want to thank you, Connie, for the restoration price. Connie, you always be there. I call you for just a little bit of show. Everybody will be your talk. You'll never turn you down. I love you. That's absolutely nothing to do about it. None other than you, my brother. You're a wonderful brother. Genuine. You know, I love you as a brother. Jordan, my right hand man. I want to talk to you before you leave, but we're going to get this thing going in September. I want to thank y'all. we're gonna, if y'all come out and get something from our concession stands, it's just we have to pay no bills, we don't have to go out no money. We got a bus, a motor coach bus that Mars bought. And what we've been doing is using the bus to take people on trips. We got a contract with the Black Mortuary Science people, Mortuary Association, they in town. We got some jobs, we've been doing good jobs in there. So we need a motor coach bus. And we got some limousines and stuff too. That's our fundraiser for the month. We don't have nobody, we come in begging people, locking the door and begging for money. We don't do it. If you know anybody that need, got a convention coming to town, got a family reunion, let us know about it.
How many states?
It's a 54 seat. 54 seat. And it works good. Air conditioning cold. Say that to black people. Air conditioning is cold. And the bus works good. Second thing is we have a summer youth program. I need y'all to help me. I need to get more black boys. Got a lot of girls in there. I got sisters that talking to the girls. But I need to get more black boys. 9 and 15. Need some black boys. So I need you to help me with that. With that being said, that's all we got going right now. And I'm gonna turn it over to Norman to do his closing remarks. Take passionately to your closing remarks. Promote your business, promote what you're doing, promote you got activity, you got something going, from whatever you got going, just that's what we need to do. One thing we need to do is get a master calendar so we can all support each other. So here we go, right here. Brother Attorney Norman Harris, closing remarks.
First and foremost, thank you, Brother John, for the invite, and thank each of you for coming out and participating as a community. I believe this is going somewhere good. I just encourage us to stick to it and be happy about what's happening. It's easy for us to be discouraged about what's not happening, but we take a moment to consider what's happening and be happy and celebrate what's happening. Then we'll stay motivated to move the agenda. I am Norman Harris. I'm an attorney, champion for justice law. I'm the leading servant for vertical renewal. Our next meeting is the second Saturday of July 8th at 5 o'clock. Each of you is invited to come. We would love to have you. I appreciate this discussion tonight, and I believe that reparations is more than an apology.
Mm-hmm.
Reparations is because our request for reparations is not just an acknowledgement, but it's basically to say, authenticate the freedom. Go ahead. Come, as I started with, freedom without resources, access, and protection is a fiction. We don't want fiction. We want authenticated freedom.
Turn it on, still your body.
You got to follow.
I couldn't drop the mic. Thank you for the invite, Jarvis. Anytime we can partner with anyone, we do, because that's what it's all about. My name is Robin Locke. I'm the Regional Director of Florida Rising. My lead is Elton Lassiter. My organizer is Rodney Johnson, and those are our members. We are a membership-based organization. Our membership is $25 a year. And what we do is we go into the communities and we empower the communities to fight on issues that concern them. After we go through the process of fighting, and let it be a year, our members know which elected is, or which person is running, or whoever is for them or not. So our journey is to empower our membership, one member at a time, right? So we can build a community with resources, a great community. Right? And that's what we do. We want to have our membership leave better than where they came. So introducing them to resources, providing them with a way to fight on issues, understanding lobbying is what we do. For the community, I think it's very important, just like that meeting the other night, it's very important that we don't speak for people, we allow people to speak with us. Right. Right? So when we go to talk about issues, even if we're not affected by it, impacted by it, per se, right? Our membership goes and speaks. So I think it's very important that we're not saving people and we don't know how they want to be saved. Right. Right. And a lot of times that's what tends to happen. We do things and we do it our way. And, you know, the impacted people are not there. That's right. Right? So that's very important. Our membership meeting, we call it the People's Assembly. It's the fourth Tuesday of every month, 5:30. Our office is 350 West Hillsborough Avenue. So you're more than welcome. I feed everybody because people come home from work. I'm thoughtful. People come home from work. So you're more than welcome to join.
At the meeting.
At the meeting. Anything I'm hosting, I feed. Yeah. I ain't cheap. If you have a black business, I pour into black businesses. I'm using white people money, so I pour into black businesses.
Let me tell you something. She wrote us a check for $100 for this event. You know, so we was happy. We didn't ask her for the $100. She wrote it. She said, "Now, John, we will." And so that's how our heart is.
Overnight talk is the fourth Thursday.
It's virtual.
Yeah, it's virtual.
Our virtual is to talk with our brother here, psychologist. He gonna talk to you. I've been on one of those talks. They're very, very, very hard. Go ahead, brother. You close your remarks. Yes.
Yeah, and this, on the 23rd is the next version of the talk. It's going to be about all of you, actually, because it's about advocacy, healing, advocacy, wellness. So many of us are in the trenches every day, and we forget to take care of ourselves. So we're going to take time out and talk about how you keep your energy in this fight, because this is a fight. Make no doubts about it. This is a war. This warfare has been declared on black people for 600 years. So we're energy. You know, I mean, I think I could wax poetic. I'm gonna say this: change begins with each and every one of us. It is not good for us to talk about what others they need to do when we have not done it. In the book, Emancipation of the Oppressed, that Dr. Gary Emmons and myself, and Dr. Katuri Gonzalez, myself, Dr. Sasha Lima, have written the Emancipation of the Oppressed community political activists.
Yeah, the doctors.
We have a 10-point step that we need folks with in the workshop. And email that 10-point creed to Brother Jarvis. But ask yourself simple stuff, just as my sister just said. If you're not spending at least 10% of your money in black businesses, what you do? I would say it should be 90, but that's a whole other conversation. If you are not with at least one black bank, One Bank United is the largest black bank in the United States. It's a real bank. You should at least be with them. If your car insurance is not with a black-owned agent, what you doing? If you're not reading a book to a young person or to an elderly person who has lost their eyesight at least once a month, what are you doing? If you're not offering some help to that single parent whose cars broke down, and help you get to work today, help you get to school today, at least once a month, what you doing? If you're not wearing something of African culture to remind you how black is beautiful. So we have to have these images in front of us. I'm going to ask you one question, and I'll shut up. What color is the stop sign? And
White.
how many signs? What color is the yield sign?
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you to look that up on your cell phone. You will discover that the yield sign has been red and white since 1971.
Oh, the light is
yellow, but the years.
It's yellow. That's why I said the sign. The sign has been red and white, three-sided since 1971. So your children, many of you, never learned it from in school, children. That's the power of beliefs. I've had people who take the workshop, one lady took it twice, and still answered. So that's the power of belief.
Right now. I'm gonna leave that one. Take that home with you.
So again, peace and blessings, and thank you, Brother Jarvis. Brother Jarvis, whom is every time you see me, I'm Marcus Garvey. So, but I used to always identify myself as being, in any panel discussion, I said I'm a product of public housing. And the reason why that was important for me is because I wanted every policy maker that was in the room at the table, they have an idea that we can speak for ourselves. That it has been through trial and error, stress and heartbreak, that many of us in our community has gained our PhD through the social experimenting of our people. And so my job and being here, and job is identified with my employer, but I'm a committed athlete. And I have dedicated myself to the work of overturning many of the contradictions that I see just in my small space. And so my next journey out, which I hope is 50 more years from now, is to work extremely hard so I can ensure that the things that pains me don't pain my grandchildren. And I plan on stepping it up, being in places where people don't want to. It's very few middle class folks that I do know that I even recognize, because I found, just in the work of activism, understanding how many of our people eat. And if they're eating and needing the system to continue that oppress us, then they're not a friend of mine. And I don't try to make myself socially acceptable to them, because in my mind, all of that, I'm thinking about how to destroy the system. Yeah. So, again, brother, I appreciate you being here, me being here, but I plan on challenging the powers to be, those that are responsible for making political decisions on the local level. I plan on stepping my game all the way up. Thank you.
One thing I say about Sister Connie is true to the game. No, she has been consistent. Sister Connie that one. I'm gonna call brother Wilbur so they can come on up and give us a short Muslim prayer. You on deck, ready to go, but it's short Christian prayer.
First, I'd like to thank y'all for inviting me and for being here over here. This has been very honorable. This is very nice. I plan on being here on this side of the wall. Father, yes, please. In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful, praise you, God, the Lord, the church of all the world, most gracious, most merciful. Master, the day of judgment, you worship you like we see shows of favor. Those that are thank you for this meeting tonight. Many of the people that really need your help. You know us better than we know ourselves. You've helped us to get to where we are today. So may you continue to bless us with those things, and to say those things that are just and necessary for the betterment of ourselves and the betterment of all mankind. Amen. O God of life, liberty, and justice, you are the God of our weary years. You are the God of our silent tears. You're the God who has brought us this far on our way. God, we thank you for the drive, the hope, the tenacity, the strength to withstand and resist and to keep fighting. We thank you for meetings like what we have tonight to recharge us
and to remind us what we should be doing on a daily basis. God, we pray for wisdom and continued guidance as we continue the journey. And God, we pray that as we prepare to leave this place tonight, that your presence goes with us. And we pray that what we have felt, what we have seen, what we have heard, stay with us to continue to empower the movement. And as we pray in the Christian tradition, in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
All right, brother. Thank you so much for everybody for coming. We do have a few refreshments still on sale, so you can thank you. For those who never had a bean pie, you want to avoid the best, that $6 for a bean pie, the best pie you've ever eaten in your life.